G'day guys, I hope you're all having a great day. I'm excited to bring to you part one of this conversation with Dewsy. Dewsy spent the last 20 years in professional cricket, so he's got a wealth of knowledge as a strength and conditioning coach and also supporting fast bowlers with their technical development. And he also does quite a lot of work with the rehab side of things. He's got his own side project, Cricket Strength, his own side business, I guess is probably a better way to put it, which he's been doing for a long time. It was actually the second cricketing resource that I found when I first started to look for education in fast bowling. When I first started my journey, I found Simon, who was bowl strong, and then I found Stefan and Dewsy at Cricket Strength. You know, since then, Stefan's developed his pace lab and Dewsy's continued to develop his cricket strength. This conversation was wonderful for me because it was a casual, unscripted, authentic, just S&C chat where I had a chance to learn from a coach who's got a lot of experience and has learned a lot over the years. One of the things that really stood out for me was part of Dewsy's philosophy is, you know, if something's not working, well then you scrap it and you keep going on. So nothing in those programs that Dewsy was doing did he ever do just for the sake of doing it. And I think that's really important because it's really easy to get caught up in methods or exercises or programs when if they're not really helping a bowler, then you sort of need to scrap them. So I hope you guys find this conversation really interesting. If you guys ever wanted to learn more from Dewsy, he does have an inner circle where he shares a significant amount of programming, coaching, conversations that he's had with a number of wonderful cricketers. I'm a member of that, and it's been wonderful for me to engage in his community and also to learn from some of his content. So I'd recommend it. If you guys have any questions after this conversation, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I always make sure I reply to everyone who takes the chance to engage with my content. I really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy this conversation.
20-meter sprint test, you know, if you're below 3 seconds, you're doing pretty well. If you're with the jump test, I don't think you need the force platforms as much anymore. If you've just got the broad jump mat, because obviously what we're looking to do is come forward rather than up. So you can actually track progressions there and you can do the lateral jumps there. 2K test, see sort of aerobic conditioning, those sorts of things. It gives you an idea. Skin folds as well and weight, because obviously it's important to have low skin folds, but also weight is weight at the end of the day. If you're 96 kgs of fat or muscle, that's still the force going through your back and front legs. Yeah. So just sort of keeping an eye on those things. But for me, like I said, the big goal all the time is getting the lads on the park.
Yeah, definitely. Was there any specific examples that you had where there was an injury or something that muscular happened that you missed something? I'm curious what sort of a context,
Actually, that's funny enough. Let's talk about Alan Richardson. He came with us. He only missed, I think, 2 4-day games in 4 years, and that was with a pulled Terry Minor.
Okay. Oh, really?
And when it's a very strange one. But when I went back in and looked at it, we did no overhead work with him. Okay. So that was something, you can't ever say, right, that's definitely caused that, but it was something I definitely didn't leave out of his program. From then on, just simple overhead pulls, 6-second eccentric, just changed it up, single arm, double arm, in a bridge position or on a bench. So we always kept it in some form in his program from then. So that was one example. And I remember at Northants, we had a spate of side strains back in 2006 or 7. And then when I went back and looked at the program, there was things that I'd left out there, particularly around sort of whole chain conditioning, trunk conditioning. I'd gone down a different route. Okay. It hadn't worked. The biggest thing for me in S&C is too many times people don't want to say I've gone down a bad route or things I said haven't worked. But for me, it's always been the time where you can almost not press complete reset, but you evaluate it and say, right, no, that hasn't worked.
Yeah.
So let's go back in, see where the player is, and move forward from there.
Yeah. It's an interesting one with the side strain, because I know that I've probably had a couple of good mates that I've played with who've always had side strains, and I coached a couple of them, and that was back in the my early days at Woodford, and you know, my boss was very much, you know, your big six type things, you know, someone who's forever preaching on Facebook about train the glutes, you know, the glutes is the key to everything. And I don't think he's done any upskill in the last 10 sorts of years. And, you know, reflecting back on their programs, it was very much, you know, like your analogy with the Lego man, probably doing way too much of that. There would have been a little bit of, you know, like medicine ball work, but I'm thinking more 3x3, 3x4 type stuff, looking at power, plus some, you know, a bit of, you know, unilateral work and whatnot, but nothing that I think would have reflected what you were just saying about, you know, getting more rotational conditioning to get them to a point where they could get back. There was some side effects there, which is common.
Then you know, you look at the glutes, and the glutes are massive, but it's got to be as part of the chain.
Yeah.
And you have to understand how that chain's working, and if it's working well. And then with mediballs as well. The mediballs, I put on a post the other day, it's probably the number one tool for conditioning to transfer from training to match. But you have to again be doing that right. If you're just throwing a mediball, you know, thoughtlessly and trying to throw it as hard as you can into a wall, it's not going to transfer as much. You need to, whatever you're doing, really, it needs to be either to enhance your game or help your body. You know, and if you can't say yes to either of those, and flick it off. Yeah,
no, definitely, that's a good point. I think the med ball stuff's always been something that I think is pretty key. What about some of the? Actually, I had a question before. I'm trying to write down the thoughts as they come across. I said the KPIs and specific muscle injury. There's something else I just said then that piqued my interest. Oh well, it'll come back. One of the things that I was trying to think about with the injuries, sorts of things, and this might be where it starts to confuse me, is I think where my thinking goes is if the more general, you know, GPP, I kind of keep it, and then let them play on the park. That would put them in a position where they're going to be, you know, as lower risk of injury as possible. And then when I try to think about the more like specificity type thing, with some of the, you know, like using Steph's Bondarchuk type model, thinking about how I would take my, you know, GPP and then progress it into more. But then do I end up leaving out some GPP? You know, and I get myself into this, I don't know, sort of type thing of going, fuck, how much is too specific that I end up not training the general capacities, but then, you know, if it does go to general capacity, and I you know, what you said before about in England with the rugby players and whatnot, that sort of, you know, knowing that, it sort of makes a lot of sense, the posts that you guys present to try to give guys more context. I never would have, that never came into my mind because I've never been exposed to that history of, you know, powerlifting in cricket.
Yeah. Well, mate, the thing is it's not having a go at those guys, because, you know, for rugby and stuff, they're fantastic. You know, they're pretty way better S&Cs than me with the stuff they knew and the nice spreadsheets they could do and all this sort of stuff and all the gadgets and everything. But they were putting blokes out of jobs. You know, there's so many stories of cricketers who have been injured training. You know, that shouldn't happen. You know, cricket and fast bowling is a hard enough thing to do without injuring yourself doing training that you have no business doing.
Yeah.
So that's where, you know, it gets to me sometimes, and there needs to be accountability as well. You know, there's probably not enough accountability in cricket. People are quite happy to sweep things under the carpet and look the other way or blame someone else. But, you know, sometimes you need to take it on the chin and say, hold your hands up. You know, that's not worked. But like you say, the hardest thing I find in strength and conditioning is knowing what to leave out, and then wrestling with your conscience. Think, if I've not got this right, this isn't going to help this lad, or, you know, girl, or, you know, whatever. But it's all the time you're thinking, right, you might have wrote a brilliant program and you sit back and think, wow, that's going to be awesome. 2 weeks later, you go back and look at it and think, Jesus, I've left that out. And that's where the thing is, because, you know, if you do go a little bit off the mainstream, you know, and you've not got squats, deadlifts, chins, bench press in the program, and someone doesn't have the results you hope, you've opened yourself up to someone else coming and say, well, that's because you've not done that. So you know, it's tricky, but when you get into things like understanding how fascia works and remodeling the fascia lines along the stress points and stuff like that, you start to think there's got to be more to it than that. And then when you start to look at some unbelievable athletes who've probably never been near a gym, you start to think, no, this gym is not as important as we really think. You know, the actual doing the sport and then help and support the player around what they do, it is probably far more important than just gym. Obviously, like there's importance to it, and there's helping building sort of robustness and resilience and everything like that. But I think if you look at the whole sort of Bondarchuk system and even the sort of hierarchy of needs, you know, it's way down there. But even, you know, if you do follow that, I follow more conjugate type of training.
Yeah.
There's always opportunities to put in some strength work. Always. Whether you do it at the start of the session or at the end of the session, whether you're doing it in clusters, so you're doing 3 lots of 3 trap bar deadlift clusters. Yeah. So they're still getting sort of the high end work. Yeah. But without the fatigue element or using blood flow restrictions or something like that. There's still opportunities, but I think hopefully it will start moving away from that, where you're feeling almost guilty if you're not doing traditional strength all the time. And the other thing, mate, is when you start to see the results from doing it, it gives you the belief, and you think, right, now we're going along the right lines here, and you know, that's the key thing.
I think some of the contrast and complex methods, you know, those in my mind, you know, to go, I can do a trap bar movement and then pair it with something a little bit more specific. Seems like you know, that sort of, you know, it's funny. I think I will almost hold on to attachments because it's almost like the back of my mind. I can go, I've seen them work in the past, and then obviously trying to link in as much of the more progressed stuff and the stuff around the fascia lines type stuff. You know, I think I went through a phase of trying to write down every single exercise that Steph sort of came out with, so that I could try to understand where to place it together in this this coaching method, depending on the bowlers that I had, you know, come down to me. And I've definitely used, you know, like remodeling type skill specific movements in the gym with some of these people. I remember telling some of them, I was like, well, we can do some, you know, some med ball exercises with a braced front leg. You know, it's not like that's going to hurt you. And I figured if you're doing 20, 30 or so of these drills, you know, that's 30 more repetitions. Is this the sort of thing in the gym programs, once they've been classified and analyzed, that it might be, whether it's the start of a session or maybe it's, you know, you might have some sort of skill specific skill stability movement paired with a
definitely
thing.
Yeah, that's what we found the most gains with the lads at Worcester, and with the one-to-one program as well. Some of the lads that come back on the one-to-one, the changes we've seen, you know, getting rid of lateral flexion, greater back contact, you know, getting that brace leg, front foot. It's been absolutely fantastic. You know, it's all been based around, like Steph's brought in the skill stability paradigm. You know, it's fantastic, and knowing when to tap in to different points of that, you know, again, along the continuum. But like you say, you know, if you are sort of wanting to do the trap bar deadlifts in the different sort of strength training, if you are then pairing it with something specific, you know, the body always remembers the last thing it does. So from that, and you're putting together sort of the remodeling along those fascial lines, you're going to get a stronger response into the positions you want, which again, we go back to what we spoke about 10 minutes ago about medibulls. You know, if you keep doing the things you want to see on the pitch during your mediball drills, it's going to help carry over a hell of a lot more.
Yeah. I mean, this might be a more of a fast bowling type question, but I think it's the link between putting the GPP work with the skill specific, like skill stability stuff, and then you going on to the pitch and whatnot. This might be a question for Steph, but you may have seen some stuff when they're doing their drills out there. Is there I'm struggling to see the link between what's S&C and what's skill specific. But
there cannot be S&C in the bowling coach. That should be bin now.
Yeah.
You know, whatever it is, there has to be a link, and you put the physio in there too. Everyone needs to be knowing exactly what you're trying to do. you know, it's same with when someone gets injured. It can't be right. You were the physio for a month, then you were the S&C for a month, because you could be going to something completely different there to something completely different there. There needs to be crossover. Everyone needs to understand it. And that's why S&Cs need to understand the sport they're trying to train for, you know, and not just say, right, well, you know, there's a lot of forces going through the body, so they need to be strong. But, you know, we need to be smarter than that. We need to see what else is needed. So 100%, I mean, you're in the inner circle, you've seen some of the programs, and you'll see we'll have like a French contrast where the last thing they do is bowl, even if it's weighted bowling or half knee bowling or something like that. So that's how they finish, you know. And so it might be something like a trap bar deadlift, a jump, a medi ball, and then bowl, where, you know, you got your strengths to start, and then the next two are priming you for the bowling.
Yeah.
So you know, you're feeding back what you want to see in the bowling during the next two drills. And the good thing is, because what we don't want with like players is to be telling them all the time to be think this, think of it, think of it. You know, yourself, when you're bowling, you haven't got time to think of stuff. You might be able to think of one thing to try and work on while you're bowling, and that's it. And even then, it's tough. So if we can almost bypass that system and get the body to do what it really wants to do, then happy days. It makes everyone's life a hell of a lot easier.
Is that almost just a reflection of, you know, looking at the body as a dynamic system and just sort of allowing the constraints to do their work? I guess because I do look at it as an S&C coach and a fast bowling coach, I definitely, you know, given I'm not working for a professional team, so I don't have to answer to anyone, so to speak. So I can afford to go mix as much as it together as possible. Maybe where I've found myself, because I don't get to see these guys, you know, 4 times a week. Sometimes I might be in a fast bowling session and, you know, maybe going too much skill stability without actually letting them bowl. And then maybe I'm actually going, oh, crap, I actually have to give them something in their bowling. And that's where I, you know, might have confused myself, going, I actually probably have to find some sort of a drill, you know, and everyone's like, what's the perfect drill? But I do agree that you sort of make it up based on their action, you know. And then is so when the way that you look at that, looking at it from a motor learning perspective, are you more looking at, you know, implicit type learning to get the right outcomes out of these guys, and there's much less, you know, internal type dialogue or being told what to do?
Yeah, it's almost trying, like I said, to take the thought process out of it and let the body just take over. You know, the body's a smart bit of kit. It will keep you away from pain as much as possible. You know, so which is why I'm a massive believer in getting rid of dysfunctions. Because once you do that, even before you touch anything else along, you know, the skill stability paradigm, you clear up, which is fantastic. So when you put the two together, you know, me and Steph work together a lot. He comes almost from one way and I come from the other. And a lot of times it meets in the middle with things. You know, like he talks about, he's got his knee or hip dom, and then with the knee dom, you know, how the preterm works. And then this, so the other side of that, okay, have they got adequate hip internal rotation? So, you know, those sort of things always sort of marry up. So, and again, it's working both sides of the system to come to the outcome you want. And like I always say, the outcome we want, however you get there, is the player on the park performing well and not getting injured.
Yeah, I do. The way that you respond to some of those guys going, have you actually done the mobility assessments? Because that's going to probably help you identify what your dysfunction is and then be able to go from there.
It's frustrating because they don't listen, a lot of people, and they don't want to do it because it's not the glamorous thing to do. They want to go into the drills that look brilliant and this, that, and the other. But if you don't know how your body's working, then trying to change it's going to lead to a hell of a lot of frustration. You know, if someone's got a lockdown hip internal rotation both sides, they haven't got good glute trunk control, they've got zero thoracic rotation and extension, and you're a knee-on bowler, then good luck. You know, you might as well book in with the physio now. But if you go and you realise it, and a lot of the time a light bulb goes on. You know, when someone's going through an assessment, and there's something like 7-8 assessments, really takes 10 minutes. And they go through it and they suddenly think, oh, actually, no, I need to work on that. I can't ignore this. The light bulb moment does go on. So when they try and shortcut it and want to go straight in, right, give me the best program, you're like, nah, come on, you got to pay your dues, understand yourself, how your body works, and then we can move forward, rather than you just hoping that 2 exercises are going to make your bollock show.
Yeah, seriously. Actually, there's an interesting question. What do you think is going to be the next bowler to bowl like 160 kilometers an hour? I almost wondered if it'd be someone kind of like a Jasprit Bumrah, who has a longer run up, steams in because of the hyperextended elbow or something. That was an interesting thought. Is the next, and Steph might have an interesting thought on this because he's got a new classification system. Is it going to be
Steph, for me, he's just out there on his own as a bowling coach. The reading he does, the understanding of it all he does, is just, every time I speak to him, we do a call with someone else, I'm learning.
Yeah.
So, whenever I speak about most things, when we cross the spectrum of S&C towards a bowling coach, it comes from Steph and Steph's learnings. But from what I understand, I think the next someone rapid will probably be someone who hasn't had all these sort of luxurious upbringings and trainings which the Western world have. I think a lot of times we can ruin bowlers rather than help them. It's interesting on one of the channels over here during lockdown, they've been showing old test matches, and there's one from either the late 80s or early 90s of West Indies bowlers, and their actions are just beautiful. They're running through the crease. There's everything sort of they're doing you'd want to see now, and you think, right, well, how much is jokers like me and other coaches coach that out of people? Do you know what I mean? You think of the intervention, some of them, have we taken really good, quick lads and either injured them or slowed them down? So I think someone will probably come from one of the other non-Western countries who hasn't been ruined by trainers and be able to bowl rapid, hopefully. Because, like Shoaib used to bowl with heavy rocks.
Gotcha.
You're like, Jesus Christ, you got people here moaning if they've not got an aqua bag or a kettlebell.
Yeah.
Shoaib was out bowling with a rock. When we go to pre-season in Abu Dhabi, they're playing their games on just dust, but they love it, and they're running in, putting everything into it. So, we could definitely learn a lot from that.
One of those, I have that same kind of question around running mechanics going, when I'm looking at coaching running mechanics, which I really do think is important, because I feel like there's a run-up profile that I can improve if I can teach them some good running mechanics. But then there's the question of what's their natural flair that I don't want to coach out of them, and your technical, rigid, bolt upright kind of sprinter that people seem to think that's the way that you should teach running, which is probably not the whole same way.
You've probably seen some of the same posts I've seen online, and you see someone like Usain Bolt, and the way, the acceleration phase isn't like a classical thing that you try and coach.
Yeah.
There's a lot of internal rotation and torque and things like that. And that's probably where, some coaches do go to the nth degree of everything's got to be straight, where, like fast bowling, Steph talked about, I think he's got 7 attractors to hit. And if you're hitting them, it doesn't really matter, what the rest of it's looking like. You don't want everyone looking exactly the same. I guess in sprinting, it's the same. If you're hitting the right angle underneath your hip contact and everything like that on the ball of the foot, then you're halfway there. And with stride patterns, is one of the things that we can take back to dysfunction. A lot of the times you can find some cross-chain dysfunction, and it's keeping the hips tight and not allowing them to get decent strides in. So, with everything, it's looking at it from every angle and not getting too caught up into thinking, right, they've got to look exactly like this. But yeah, to get the basics of the mechanics and them running well. And one of the big things I've always found with that is getting them out of their shoes.
That's a great one.
You get someone out of their Nike Air Max, and they're not going to sprint by smacking their heel on the floor.
Yeah.
Or if they do, they'll learn very quickly not to.
Yeah.
One of the good transitions to that is just skipping in bare feet. There's so much great learnings for the body. If just do like 30-second blocks, skipping the feet, the quick ground contact time, the foot landing underneath the hip all the time, and it's self-regulating. So if you're not doing it right, it's going to stop pretty quick.
Yeah, that's definitely one. I mean, and then like the wicket running as well, which is something that kind of like forces people into a good position too.
Yeah.
With that point, with the skipping and whatnot, I know that there's a heap of plyometrics and depth drops and whatnot that people do for the looking specifically at the foot and ankle. You know, is there anything that you guys kind of go with the ankles and feet to actually try and coach in? And there were sort of two thoughts that I had there. One was obviously some of Candid's stuff that I was going through his speed training book and his spring ankle work. You know, I know that I wonder if that's probably similar or along the same process of the position specific isometrics that Steph put in. You know, is that something that is almost like done at the end of a session, or there's always something incorporated around trying to strengthen the feet?
Yeah, I'm not that aware of Candid's. I know Steph is, so like I can't really talk on his stuff, but you know, I've heard it's fantastic. But you know, what we do is you almost try and cover the two bases. So if we do something like a back foot hopping drill where they're getting into their sort of coil position and they're just using that back foot, we know, you know, that's helping across two areas. One, helping the sort of the strength stability around that ankle, and it's also getting what we want them to be doing on back foot contact, getting off it, getting quick, and in that the position, obviously, like we say again, underneath the center of mass. So your basic support under the center mass, which is pretty much normally under your hip. So it's learning that way. So then we've got different things like plantar walks that we brought in, and I cannot remember where we got them from. I think it was someone like Eric Cressy or someone like that. But again, just barefoot plantar walks, just getting used to the ankles and creating that stiffness and stability all around them, and then all up the chain. But again, getting them out of shoes. The shoes are killing.
There's a lot. Get like teaching them how to, like, you know, use the right foot pressure, teach the, you know, the arches and the tripod.
Yeah. You know, so you see so many kids now in shoes all the time. They're taking off and they got falling arches and everything like that. And they're just, as soon as they get out of shoes, they almost lose balance. You know, they've got no kinesthetic feel. Their proprioception's all over the shop.
Yeah.
So, you know, then when you're trying to teach the simple movement stuff to them, they struggle. And it's to do with the fascia as well under the feet. Once it's getting in contact with the ground, it starts to sort of learn how it needs to be working. So obviously you need to find, you know, safe ground so there's no glass or anything on the floor. But getting out of shoes is huge, even for the anterior shift. Most trainers have got a heel that big and a front foot that big, so you're always shifting downwards. You know, you think of weightlifting shoes. One of my big things, thinking, okay, why are we putting a fast bowler in weightlifting shoes? Is it because he cannot do the movement? In that case, we need to dial back and understand to do the movement. You know, if you put a big hipped-on bowler in shoes, getting him squatting, you're going completely against everything which will help him completely. And you know, we're seeing people who, you know, 2010 were bowling one way. By 2006, they're almost bowling a completely different way, and not the bowler they were. You know, and that's down to training. So that's where, you know, the whole sort of system's got to be a lot smarter.
Yeah, I mean, I had a bit of an experience. I think, you know, being training the way that I'd usually train again, somewhat squat shoes, but very much, you know, when I'm looking at a squat, I was taught hips back, knees out, and that was a pattern that I developed. And I probably didn't realize until I was having a chat with a couple of people and looking at running and looking through some of these, you know, upskill courses, that when I was looking at my running, you know, I almost like wanted to drive my knees out. I ended up dropping my pelvis underneath because that was where I found balance, and knees out was always the cue that I'd sort of been taught with landing.
Yeah. Ribs flaring, going into lumbar extension, and then we wonder why, like you say, you were repeating that when you're running. Well, that's what you know. You've been pushing your body to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
It almost feels that that's a natural thing for it to do. So then it continues. So that, you know, that's why the whole thing's got to be looked at. And if you can't answer the yes to it, is it helping people away from injury, or is it helping them progress their game? Then it's got to be slung, and you can't be married to one exercise or one philosophy or one system.
Definitely. And the ribs flow was another really good one. And that was actually one of those things that I noticed a lot in just general amateur lifters. And that's from absolute extended posture, you know, that tone was all off. And when I first found the breathing work, you know, I had a mate who went and did a internship with Cressy and sort of came red hot, and he's done really, really well here in Australia, but he's more gone down the powerlifting route. But I did do some stuff with him, and he was, you know, he first introduced me to the PRI stuff a few years back, and I sort of tried to apply it into, well, if they're flared, like if their ribs are flared here and their pelvis is ducked out there, and David Gray said some similar things. If they're bowling in that position, I don't think it's a great position to be able to use your upper body effectively. You know, like your length tension through your abs especially is going to be shit house. And I'm thinking that's going to have a poor flow on.
Mate, I mean, the Cressy stuff and the PRI stuff is just, there's so much gold in it. And there's probably a lot of it that I still don't do because you just couldn't get people to do it.
Yeah.
You know, to get people on the floor with a balloon, with arm above their head, it's not easy to do because they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So, you know, those that do get in great recovery and they understand how to use a diaphragm, which is huge. You know, like you said, that position you talk about is a horrible position. They're bowling in it, and then we're training them in it.
Yeah.
We're literally pushing them into the physio door. Literally. So it's understand, how can we get them out of that? How can we support them? What does their body need? You know, and that's why for me, if we don't start with a movement assessment to understand how they move, then put it together with everything else, and then, you know, movement's great in understanding that, but then if you don't understand what you're looking at from their bowling, you can't put the two together.
Yeah. And
once you can put it all together, hopefully you're going to get a decent athlete who can keep bowling.
Yeah, well, that's my plan. Given I can do the fast bowling side, the S&C side. Well, I can understand it from both sides, so I'd love to be able to do that. Same dude said to me, fast bowlers at the age of 15 and 16 are just going to break down. You know, it's just going to happen. You know, like there's almost like nothing we can do about it. I almost thought that's a little bit naive, mate. You can't just put a blanket statement like that out. You know, like, yes, like, you know, if they go to a private school and they have private school cricket, they've got rep cricket, they've got club cricket, yeah, they're probably going to break down. But there's definitely
you find that a lot on cricket, and I got labelled as the S&C doesn't like strength. You know, it just sticks with you. You know, so people think, oh, we'll do all day is foam roll and stuff like that. And you just think, I don't even know where this has come from. You know, foam rolling is something we might do maybe 2% of the time.
Yeah, I don't do it anymore. If someone wants to, that actually might be a good question about warm-ups. I feel like I've now gotten to a point where I couldn't give a fuck what you do. You know, provided there's just a little bit of breathing and movement, you know, that gets you feeling good, I'm happy. Foam roll, I don't know, is it even that necessary?
Yeah, no, I don't think it is. You know, I think it's more activation for me now. You know, you're getting ankles, hips, thoracic, and they go and they're working, a little bit of jumping, some medical work. You know, some people don't even do that. Some people just turn up, slam a medical a few times and be good to go. You know, everyone's slightly different. So that's where you almost need to help inform them, but then listen to them to see what they need to do.
Yeah.
We'll go with that. You know, with older players who come to Worcester, I say to them, listen, you know, if they're above 30 or an international, I'm here to support you. I'm not going to push all my ideas on you and say you've got to do this, and this. But let me know what you need, and I'll do my best to help you out.
Yeah, I mean, you had a good story about Lance Klusner, who just knew himself to a point where he could, if one ball.
Yeah, one or two balls, put them, Dewsy, done. All right, mate. No worries. You know, legend. Absolute legend.
Those kinds of stories I just think are so cool. I mean, one, it must be great to have a person who's that aware of what he needs to do as opposed to being told. And I feel like you do get that a lot, especially at the level that I've got. You know, a lot of people are almost like waiting for you to be told what to do as opposed to taking some initiative.
Definitely,
mate. Someone asked with the breathing work, Is that something, you know, like with the breath type stuff, is teaching people diaphragmatic breathing almost like something you go to from day one, something they do as a part of their warm up? Is there always some sort of a 1990 hip lift or hip shift or?
Yeah, the programs I had for our academy here, it was the first thing they did. Make sure you bring a balloon. And if they forgot a balloon, they wouldn't forget it again. And just to understand it. The thing I went wrong with it a little bit, I probably didn't explain it fully, exactly what it was doing. But yeah, it's one of the first things we do and just try and teach. The way I teach it as well is to get them to do it sort of during recovery, then bring it in almost to start, even with, you know, when they just wake up, things like that. You know, if they do some of that and get on a vibration platform or do a little bit of bouncing on a mini trampoline or something like that, just to get everything going and to sort of shake that fascia a little bit, then happy days. You know, they're going to be moving a lot better, because then they're going to be sat down so much during the day, you know, down. They're not going to be up. So the diaphragm's going to be out. They're probably going to do a lot of mouth breathing instead of through the nose, and they're not going to be getting in a good state at all.
Yeah, I reckon that's one of the things I've encouraged people as much with. But the nasal breathing was something that was a tool I suggested to go, well, it's you know, that's more parasympathetic. It's going to help you relax and whatnot, you know. And I think I asked you as well in the inner circle if there was conditioning type work that you did where you also protocoled in breathing work, whether it was, I saw a post from Brian McKenzie and he talks about his breathing gears. I can't remember what they were, but it looked kind of cool to go. You breathe, you know, you're doing this light jog, just, you know, even nasal in, even nasal out. That was something I was, you know, wondering if there was what sorts of sort of.
Yeah, not a problem. I mean, talking with Gav, another guy I do some work with, and he's experimenting with just nasal breathing at the moment, and actually taping up his mouth to do stuff while training, to just do that, and then during recovery periods as well, in looking at recovery rates. So yeah, something looking into, but not yet. If you see someone running in with a taped mouth, you know they've probably been saying something stupid.
I'm gonna say, if it's going that far, and I've never found myself to be able to go to an intensity hard enough with just breathing through my nose.
Yeah, no, I've tried it with a restriction mask on and stuff, and yeah, interesting.
Yeah, with some running work, I was trying to think about how you'd go about which running work you'd end up putting out. I've sort of given a few guys during the off season type thing. You know, it's okay to head out for a 5-10 sort of K jog where you're just breathing through your nose and whatnot. I was wondering what, you know, how you guys look at almost like periodizing it from off season going through, where it's, you know, starting just whatever you want to do, maybe keeping some sort of a speed stimulus so that, you know, it's good for the tendons and muscles and whatnot. And how you sort of balance it out going forward, if it's, you know, sort of taking away any work over a minute and just putting it all down to more 10, 15, 20-second type efforts.
Yeah. You tend to start off sort of the off season with a couple of probably over 20-minute runs a week, maybe. And I still like to do one speed type session, even if it's just during a warm up, just looking at the, you know, your normal things. You know, I got a load of stuff years and years ago from Parisi Speed School, and those drills always pretty much served me well. But then as you get obviously nearer the season, the longer stuff comes down and the short, sharp stuff goes up. But then in around the bowling, depends how much you're bowling, it's sort of going above and below it. So you might have some pure speed sessions with lots of recovery, and then some just slower, longer jogs. So it's still only sort of 20-30 minutes, but, you know, not racing it. Just to actually get the aerobic capacity going and keep it sort of working, really. But again, it depends. If you're someone who's playing 5 days a week, then bowling's a priority, and you got to help around that. So you probably wouldn't be doing a hell of a lot of running because you're doing enough while you're bowling.
That's it.
But if you just plays at the weekends, to be doing, you know, one longer run and maybe 1 or 2 shorter sprint sessions a week, you know, isn't going to be detrimental.
Is there ever something that you go, I actually want to look at some structural adaptation where it might be the kind of aerobic training where it's not very specific, but it's physiological adaptation specific, where you're looking at, you know,
As in sort of trying to get their sort of yo-yo score up or something like that, or
more like, you know, those sort of like cardiovascular developments where you're looking at their cardiorespiratory system. You know, you're obviously not going to be able to see it, but, you know, your left ventricle size, capillarization, some of those kinds of, you know, structural adaptations that, in theory, it sounds like it's going to help them. I'm just wondering it, you know, just like if I have a bowler who just has no muscle and could probably benefit from a little bit of hypertrophy just because he has no muscle to handle force.
yeah. No, I mean, not into that much depth. It's literally just looking at the end results. So whether it's your 2K time, even like the 1K splits or yo-yo time, depending on the player, it's just be helping to improve that basically.
Now that makes sense, because I'm thinking about it not so much the outcome that I'm after, more thinking that getting this is going to help with the outcome down the track. That's cool.
Comment. All I can say is when you're looking at the chain and how the chain works for throwing athletes, you know, bowlers, boxers, golfers, the most sort of powerful you see is more towards the mid to outside and that coming around. When you look at a boxer who's on the inside of that back foot, you always see that their hips don't come through quite as well. So that's the only what sort of I can comment on that. I don't know the ins and outs of the foot debate in the moment.
So with that, you'd more say that like they're starting it with that loaded position with the weight on the outside and then sort of transferring it inward onto the hip.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that might come back to the pre-turn type stuff where if you have someone struggling, have you ever like taught, like made guys do pre-turn drills barefoot to encourage better foot positioning?
In our gym at Worcester, we're always barefoot basically.
I love
The
that.
only time is if they're doing something which might rough their foot up a little bit, but other than that, they're barefoot.
No one gets like told off for hygiene or, you know, safety reasons. If you drop a plate on them, the shoes will save their foot.
No, it's just, you know, that's a very quick learning to be careful. But no, so far, touch wood, nothing like that.
Oh, that's good. That's always one of those funny things I hear about. You know, you've got to keep your shoes on for safety purposes, but I don't know.
Yeah, they've been told at other gyms that they're not allowed to do it. In sort of one-to-one guys and inner circle guys, they've been told put your shoes back on.
Yeah.
But no, luckily in our gym, it's no shoes off.
How often do you have them in the gym?
Geez, it depends on the individual.
Oh, really?
If you're looking at the start of a winter, it might be 6 times. If we're in season, normally they get sort of 3 sessions, and 2 of them might be with their bowling involved as well.
Yeah.
And so they be supporting around that, and then it gets breaking down into other things like recovery sessions, activation sessions, and things like that, rather than just strength. But they normally sort of have sort of 2 to 3 strength plans, or say strength, but you know what I'm talking about. And they work around that because you know everything is trying to support them, like bowling for or being on the park for 6 hours, 2 days on the trot.
It's like when you say strength, it's more, we're more looking at, you know, so when you select your exercises and whatnot, I remember you saying, you know, some front squats are okay, but more your Bulgarian splits, and I'm guessing more unilateral multiplanar type movements. Where are they looking at, you know, as they do progress? Is it more just, yeah, we'll put a bit more load on, but that's obvious that's not the main priority, because it's more like quality movement here, so that when they do the contrast, the complex, like the things in the tracker, they're the things that.
Yeah. There's markers we take, we try and take every week. You know, like a broad jump, like the FMS press up, and things like the thoracic rotation, hip internal rotation. So if we're doing well and those markers are still hitting their baselines, then we're happy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I remember you saying something about at the conference about the counter movement jump being something that you'd taken away as a measure for preparedness.
Yeah, we just didn't. We've done it for like 3 years.
Yeah.
and there was no correlation that we could see with anything.
Gotcha.
There was no correlation with injuries, no correlation with fatigue. So we're just like, well, why are we still doing it then? So we took it out, put the broad jump in, and so we're seeing how we go with that. Because again, you know, if we're not going to waste our time checking 28 different things every week, if we can't see the point or the correlation of it. So yeah, we just took it out.
It's good. I had two questions following on from that. You know, what other things have you found correlation, like no correlation with, that you'd kind of moved on from? And then the second part, I was wondering about how you communicate with the powers that be around the programs and whatnot, and why you do things the way that you do things, and how they go with like being receptive to that.
I'm quite lucky because I think I've earned my trust, and so basically, you know, if the coaches have something they want to see, we talk about it, and I can show them where it is in there. And so yeah, and the head of science and medicine, who's the physio, he communicates really well with them all. So basically, I get quite a free rein to get on with it. But for other things that we've taken out of testing, I'm just trying to think.
This might be a broad question going all the way back to.
We've done so much. Some things we changed, like doing the knee to wall dorsiflexion. We've done. We do half kneeling as well as tall kneeling to make sure there's nothing that we think could be an ankle issue. Well, then you go half kneeling, their ankles are fine. So you look more up the chain. But no, not really. I think with thoracic rotation, we got to a stage where the boys were flying through it. So we went from doing it every week to every month because they were just fantastic and they're on it. So yeah, I can't think, mate, to be honest.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I guess I was more trying to pick out what sorts of things you'd you know, the key learnings or the key changes in the course of your career that gone, you know what, this actually isn't the most effective way of doing things, but that's
much easier. There've been loads of them.
Yeah. The more you can pick up on and then not make the same mistakes, or take the thought process. I mean, you know, in some of these conversations that I've had with people, it's almost like I feel like I'm just I'm trying to articulate my own thoughts, and it's almost like good to have someone, you know, put it in their thoughts and like see how they go about thinking through the same information. And
trust yourself as well, mate. You know, you probably do shitloads of reading, a whole around the subject. Trust your instincts. You know, go with it. You know, I've known Steph for 20 years, but I don't do everything that he says. You still got to read around, go other stuff. So, you know, the well of people I go to is huge. You know, from Cressy, DeFranco, Parisi, Mike Reinhold, the Move You guys over, Kelly Starrett, some of the things he's done. Jill Miller. Jill Miller was hands down the best course I've ever done.
Yeah.
Did back 2015, I think it was.
Is Jill,
my God.
Who's Jill Miller? I think I know Jill Cook.
She does the fascia therapy ball rolling, and the whole different techniques with the different size therapy balls, and it was just mind blowing. And obviously, then you put the fascia with the other way of working the fascia, to understand what the fascia needs, how you can get into it, how you can change it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just fascinating. And so you go down all these little rabbit holes of different people and the different things, and then you got this toolkit that we talk about, and then it's up to you to get into that toolkit and put out the things which you think are going to work with a particular player, and then you put your balls on the line a little bit and hope it does work.
Definitely. Now that's it. It's more. I think I was saying to a friend, I was like, I'd like to go down these rabbit holes with a bit of an overall understanding, so that you don't go down them and get lost and go, shit, what was
you definitely need a framework. So my framework since 2005 is been using Conjugate.
Yeah.
So everything I do almost fits into that system, you know, and it can be different variants on a theme. So GPP might be a lot more with one player and a lot less with another player, and then nowadays I use a lot of Steph's skill stability paradigm work. But again, in different volumes for different players. But then you learn around it. Like when I was at Somerset, we worked with a Pilates lady called Susan Scott, and she was phenomenal as well, actually teaching me about movement and things like that. And then I did a course with Mark Comerford in 2008, which was along the same lines, which opened my eyes to why some of the lads were getting injuries they were getting. But yeah, it's having your own sort of philosophy and fitting within that, and not being afraid to say that doesn't work off your pop, but this looks like it might. Does it work? Yeah, right. We'll stay and fit you in there somewhere.
Yeah, I sort of had a bit of a play around with an overall philosophy. I put myself. It's an absolute mess in here because my way of like learning is writing notes of shit, which I end up losing them all because they kind of get written down and then exactly. It's ridiculous. I bought myself some big piece of paper. There's some that's sort of like the overall thing I tried to give myself, where I started, coach to athlete relationship, and then sort of can look at the athlete as a biological system and a psychological system, I guess, body and mind, and break that down a bit more into physiology and biomechanics, motor learning.
I got a shoot in a set, but everything boils down to those two things. Is it going to help their game, or is it going to help their body and stay away from injury? Yeah. And so if you can fit a yes into one of those two, you explore it. If it's a no, right off your pop.
No, definitely.
That's simple.
It's always good to bring it back into just the simple terms. And again, the simple terms always end up working.
Exactly that, mate.
Well, I appreciate it.
Well, I hope you guys took plenty away from that conversation with Dewsy. It was wonderful for me to have, especially as an S&C coach who's always looking to discuss different ideas and learn from people who may have taken a slightly different route in developing players. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them below. If you enjoyed the conversation, feel free to tell your mates and get them to watch it too, which would be cool for me. And if you feel like subscribing, I'll leave that up to you. Hope you guys have a great day, and I look forward to sharing more conversations with you.